the summer of 2020 when I first read Dune. I had owned a copy of the book since 2016, and while I'd often heard Dune compared to The Lord of the Rings of science fiction, I'd always been hesitant to actually begin reading the book. But with the impending arrival of Denis Villeneuve's adaptation of such a legendary book, I decided it was time to read Dune before the release of the film in the fall of 2020. Dune quickly became one of my favorite books, and the film adaptation went from something I was looking forward to, due to Denis Villeneuve directing, to becoming my most anticipated film of the year, until it was delayed to fall 2021. Yet now having knowledge of the book, I understood why its adaptation to film had been considered an impossible task by so many, and would have to wait an extra year to see just how this adaptation would turn out. Now, nearly a year since the initial release date, Part 1 of Dune is finally in theaters, so it is now time to answer the question, is 2.5 hours enough time to do the first half of the book justice? For those unfamiliar with the story of Dune, the film follows Paul Atreides, the son of Duke Leto Atreides and Lady Jessica. By imperial decree, the Atreides must leave their ocean-covered homeworld of Caladan and take control of the desert planet Arrakis. This planet is home of the spice, which is the most valuable resource in the galaxy. However, the Atreides' mortal enemies, the Harkonnens, who previously ruled over Arrakis, have been scheming to destroy the Atreides bloodline and reclaim Arrakis for themselves. In order to survive on the desolate dunes of Arrakis, the Atreides must make allies of the native people known as the Fremen before the Harkonnens manage to put their plans into action. Now, the largest obstacle this film needed to overcome to appeal to a more mainstream audience was the world building of Dune. The book was able to rely on 20 pages solely dedicated to the unique terminology of Dune. To get around the film being bogged down by constant exposition, most of the world building has been left out, with only the most crucial details necessary to understanding the story being explained in an approachable way. As for the actual worlds of Dune, each planet is masterfully brought to life with gorgeous visuals and set design. These planets truly feel otherworldly, despite being filmed mostly in real-world locations rather than in a studio against a green screen. Watching a ship rise from the ocean or seeing the glow of a spice harvester through the veil of a sandstorm is truly a breathtaking sight to behold. And the sound design, which accompanies the visuals, is just as exquisite. The score by Hans Zimmer is easily one of my favorite scores that he has composed. Each faction is given its own musical identity, such as bagpipes to represent the nobility of House Atreides, or a savage drum beat to emphasize the brutality of the Harkonnens. This gives the score a unique yet cohesive identity, which, while the score can be overpowering at times, it manages to enhance the overall viewing experience. The casting for this film was also perfect. Timothée Chalamet brings a very vulnerable performance to the character of Paul and manages to capture Paul's inner struggles without making him seem like a moody teenager. His interactions with Jason Momoa's Duncan Idaho are a joy to watch, and you really get the feeling of close camaraderie between these characters. Jason Momoa also gets some of the best action scenes in the entire movie. Rebecca Ferguson plays Paul's mother, Lady Jessica, and brings a much more emotional take to the character than I had imagined while reading the books, but I still enjoyed her overall performance nonetheless. Oscar Isaac perfectly captures Duke Leto's sense of justice and nobility. His performance definitely conveys the attitude of a respectable leader, making it clear why so many people would admire the Duke's leadership. Baron Vladimir Harkonnen is stunningly brought to life by Stellan Skarsgård. The film accurately captures the intimidating look of the Baron, while Skarsgård's line delivery perfectly captures the Baron's cold and calculating menace. My only issue with this version of the Baron is that we don't get to see more of him, but that will surely be remedied when Part 2 comes out. As for the Fremen characters, they are hard to judge since they do not play a very large role in this story. Javier Bardem as the Fremen leader Stilgar was great in the few scenes that he appeared in, and I look forward to seeing more of him in Part 2. Now, what may upset some people is the role that Zendaya's character Chani plays in this film, which is to say that she is barely in the movie. Her appearances throughout the film are relegated to appearing in Paul's visions until the very end of the movie. While this is accurate to when her character is introduced in the book, the marketing for this movie implies that her character plays a much larger role in the story. However, Chani is very important in the second half of the book, so we'll just have to wait and see how Zendaya brings Chani to life when Part 2 comes out. Unfortunately, there are a couple of characters who I feel are adapted poorly from the book, those being Thufir Hawat, played by Stephen McKinley Henderson, and Dr. Yue, played by Chang Chen. The fault here does not lie on the actors, but more so on the story for focusing on Paul's journey. This leaves the side characters such as Thufir and Yue, who do not interact with Paul very much, to be underdeveloped. This is most obvious with Dr. Yue, since his subplot in the book is vital to the events which occur throughout the story, while his role in this film is treated more as an afterthought. And that brings us to what is simultaneously this film's greatest strength and glaring weakness, which is the story. Denis Villeneuve set out to make his adaptation of Dune as faithful as possible to the book, but doing that in just one film was impossible. The solution was to split the story of Dune between two films, and this decision resulted in a very faithful adaptation of the first half of Dune. But despite how successful of an adaptation this is, the fact remains that this film does not tell a complete story. There is no satisfying conclusion here, and the ending of the film feels like the story is just getting started. Ultimately, Dune Part 1 feels like 2.5 hours of setup for a sequel that wasn't even guaranteed when Part 1 released. But these 2.5 hours of setup are some of the most beautiful 2.5 hours that I have seen in film. To me, this is still one of the best films to be released in recent memory. While 2.5 hours is still not quite enough time to do the first half of the book complete justice, this feels like the best adaptation possible, given the limits of a modern big-budget studio film. It is clear just how much passion the people involved in this project have for the book and doing the story right. While it will be a long wait for the release of Part 2 in 2023, I have complete faith that the next part of this adaptation will be a masterpiece and only serve to elevate Part 1 once people can watch them back to back. But those were just my thoughts on Dune. Let me know what you thought in the comments, and until next time, thanks for watching.